Alright, an equation of a circle. So the equation of a circle centered at HK with a radius of R looks like this. Two squares added equals a square of a number. So to sketch a graph of a circle is fairly simple. First we identify the center and the radius. The center for this problem is the opposite of the x, the opposite of the y, and the radius, what do you square to get 9 and 3? So graphing is fairly simple. Move to the center, which is 1, -1, -2. So move 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and 1, 2, 3 in all directions. Connect that with a smooth curve, and there's my circle. That's simple. That's simple if the problem is given in this form, and you'll notice it's not always given in this form. You have to do a bit of algebra to get there. Well, looking at the next problem, the center is at -2. There's no number there, means 0, and the radius is 2. So I would move to -2, 0. That's my center, and I move 2 up, 2 down, 2 to the right, and 2 to the left. Connect those with a smooth curve, and there's going your circle don't have to be perfect at all on the homework. Your grid does, but your circle doesn't. Here we have a center at, well, there's nothing next to the x, that means it's a 0. The opposite is a 3. And what do you square to get a 1? 1. So 0, 3, 1, 2, 3, that's the center. I'm gonna move 1 above, 1 below, 1 to the right, and 1 to the left. So here I'm rescaling this, and the circle would look like this. If I look at the next set of problems, I'll notice that, well, we have a problem. The problem doesn't look like what we just did. So here what we have to do, we have to complete the square. To do that, we get the x's together, the y's together, we move the number over, and we're gonna add whatever number I add right there, I must add here. And whatever number I add right there, I must add here. So take half of the middle number, which is 2, and square it. That makes this x with that sign, the number before I squared it. Plus, take half of the middle number, which is 3. Half of 6 is 3. Square 3, you get a 9. And this would become y with that sign, the number before I squared it, squared. And the reason we're adding the 4 to both sides of the equation and the 9 to both sides of the equation, because remember, I can only add a 0 to an equation and keep it valid. So hence I'm adding and subtracting 4, and I'm adding and subtracting 9. And here we'll get 13 minus 1 is 12. So this is a circle with a center of -2, -3, and the radius is the square root of 12, which is the square root of 9 is 3, the square root of 16 is 4. So this is 3 point something. You don't have to get it exact, but you do need to get the number to match so that the graph is reflecting the correct point. And let me enlarge that just a bit. Here we are. So if I am to go to the center, which is -2, -3, I would move roughly 3, 1, 2, 3, and a bit above, 1, 2, 3 and a bit above, 1, 2, 3 and a bit to the right, and 1, 2, 3 and a bit to the left. And if I connect those with a smooth curve, and there it is, something like that. And here's the next problem. The same deal, I want to complete the square. I'll get the x's together, the y's together. But here I notice the leading coefficient is not a 1. So to be able to complete the square, I need to factor that out. That's the only way I can complete the square. Factor 2 out of the x's, and I'm going to add a number to this side of the equation. I'll elaborate on that in a minute. For the y's, I'll factor the 2 out. Out of both of those, that would be y squared minus 3y. Now, to keep this equation balanced, again, I'm allowed to add a 0 and multiply by 1. To add a 0, whatever number I add right there, I must add right there. But since this number is being multiplied by 2, I must multiply this by 2. So adding that number to both sides of the equation is like adding and subtracting the same number, which is a 0. And this number is going to be right there. Since this is multiplied by 2, I need to multiply that by 2. Take half of the middle number, which is 1, and square it. That's a 1. That guarantees that this becomes 2 into x plus the number before you squared it squared. Here, take half of the middle number. Half of negative 3 is negative 3 halves, and square it. That's 9/4. This guaranteed to become y with that sign, the number before you squared it. And here I'm looking at 1 times 2, that's 2, and 9 halves. So, if I multiply by a half, I'm looking at x plus 1 squared plus y minus 3 halves squared equal, oh, and this I didn't work it out, what that is, 4 plus 9 is 13. If I multiply by a half, that will be 13/4. That's the equation that I'm looking at. I have a center of negative 1 3 halves, the opposite of this and the opposite of that, and I have a radius of radical 13 over 2. So 13 over 4 is really 3 and 1/4. So it's a number between 3 and 4. So when I say the square root of 2, the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of 1 is 2. So this is a number between 1 and 2, 1 point something. Again, the square root of 2, the square root of 1 is 1, and the square root of 4 is 2. Since this is the square root of that, that's a number between 1 and 2. 1 point, anything will do. Again, we're not going to be super picky, but it has to match. So here, I will move 1 to the left, and 1.5 up. I'm going to move 1 and some up, 1 and some down, 1 and a bit, 1 and a bit. Connect those with a smooth curve. Again, your graphs don't have to be perfect on the homework. And there it is. So that's how we graph circles. In general, you get it in standard form. On your test, most likely you're going to get it in this form. You're going to have to complete the square. How about if I gave you some information about a circle and said find an equation of a circle? The same deal. Here, if I told you that find an equation of a circle to satisfy the given condition, if the center to this circle is 1, 2, then x minus 1 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals r squared, which is 9, and that will be my answer. Done. That's simple if I'm given all the information needed. If I am looking at the next problem, problem B, it says, what if the center is at 2, negative 3? The best thing you could do in any math equation, write down what you know. So I don't know why I put a minus there. I shouldn't have. There we go. So write down what you know. Plus y minus a negative, that's plus 3 squared equal r squared. This is what we know. We know this graph, again, a rough sketch. It's not asking to graph it. At 2, 1, 2, 3, that's the center. It passes 1, 2, 3, 4. So the circle looks something like this. Keep in mind, any point on the circle must satisfy that equation. The fact that it passes through the point 4, 3 means if I replace x by 4 and y by 3, I could figure out what that radius is. So if I put a 4 right there and a 3 right there, I will get 2 squared, which is 4, 6 squared, which is 36, and r squared will be 40. So if I replace that by 40, that would be my answer. And I'm done right there. That simple. If I know what to do, it's fairly simple. Now, how about this following problem? Again, they're not asking for a graph, but a rough sketch. It says the center, well, I know it's going to be x minus 3 squared plus y minus 4 squared equal, and how does that work? If the radius is at 1, if the center is at 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, when it says tangent to the y, that means this circle touches the y only at one point. That's what that means. That's what tangent means. It touches only at one point. Well, if it touches at one point, doesn't that mean that that's the radius? Doesn't that mean that the radius is really the 3 units? And there it is. That's what tangent means. A tangent to a curve touches the curve at one point. It has a bit more than that, but that's all we need. How about if I'm looking at this next problem? Endpoints of the diameter. What that means, if you look at a number line, if you go to the point 1, oops, I didn't center that. Let me center it. If you go to the point 1, negative 1, negative 2, and 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. What that means that the circle looks something like this. What a diameter is, that's a very special line. If you look at a diameter is a line that passes through the center of the circle. Well, if I have a line and I want to find half of it, isn't that the midpoint? So the center in this case is actually the midpoint. How do you find the midpoint? You average the x's and you average the y's. The center would be the midpoint, which is 4 over 2, which is 2, and 4 over 2, which is 2. So the center is 2, 2. Then this is what I know. I know that x minus 2 squared plus y minus 2 squared equals r squared. I still need to find r. How am I going to do that? Well, isn't this point on the circle and this point on the circle? If I pick either one and I plug it in, shouldn't that satisfy that equation? So if I take, let's say, 1, negative 2, put 1 there, that would be 1 minus 2 squared, plus a negative 2 there. That will be negative 1 squared, which is 1, negative 4 squared, which is 16. So r squared is 17. So if I go back, put 17 there and square it, that would be my answer. And that would be, I believe that would be it for this section.